All right, let's continue. Okay, so again, there are American bases all over the Middle East. And originally, these bases were established to protect them from basically their own people. Okay? These are monarchies that were imposed on these nations by the Anglo-American Empire, the British first, and then the Americans came to support these monarchies. And so they provide defense. But then you're like, wait a minute here. I mean, didn't we just say that these American bases can't actually defend these people, that they're exposed? And the answer is, yes, that's true. But remember that the American military was built during the Cold War. Okay? And the Cold War was a war between the Soviet Union and America. And so the Cold War was defined as something called MAD, mutually assured destruction, because both had nuclear weapons, okay? So they didn't really go to war against each other. And so in other words, these bases aren't really meant to defend these nations from other enemies. They're really meant to impose American authority in the Middle East, okay? And it's the idea of this. It's the idea that empire, it is really a image. It is a hallucination. It's just an idea. Empire is it's an aura of invincibility and invisibility, okay? If you fear it, then you obey it. But it's not really designed to fight a war, okay? And so that's why we have this absurd situation. And because there are so many bases in the GCC, that gives the Iranians the perfect pretext to attack them in order to destroy the GCC economy, which will destroy the American empire, right? All right, so this is how the war is shaping out, okay? So the red is the Israelis and the Americans. The yellow are the Iranians. And as you can see, the Iranians are attacking everywhere, primarily Israel, okay? But also, as you can see, a lot of focus on Bahrain and Qatar. And again, the intention is to destabilize the economy and the government. Okay? It's to try to get as much instability as possible. All right? Okay, and as you can see, the Americans and Israelis are focused on Tehran. And so the Americans and the Israelis use something we call shock and awe. And the very idea of shock and awe is you decapitate the enemy. If you cut off the head, the body will fall down, okay? The problem, though, is, again, the Iranians see this as a religious war. And so the Iranians have announced total war. Okay? And so what this means is that right now, command and control in Iran is decentralized. There's no one person telling everyone what to do. Every region has its own orders, has its own strategy. And so if you knock out Tehran, everyone else keeps on going. So if you take off the head, it doesn't change anything. Okay? But unfortunately, the Israelis and the Americans use this as a military doctrine. Military doctrine just means how you design your military for what purpose. And so even though the Americans seem like an invincible army, they are not equipped to fight a 21st century war against drones, against destabilization, against religious fanatics. Okay, they're just not. All right, but unfortunately, because of military doctrine, they're going to keep on attacking Tehran. Now, the great irony of all this is that the Iranians who would be most supportive of regime change, are actually in the cities because they are educated, they're progressive. The people who are most fundamentally against you, will fight you to the death, are religious fanatics, the Shia militants, living in the rural areas, okay? So this is a really silly thing where you are actually destroying those who will most likely support you, and you're leaving alone those who are most likely to commit jihad against you. All right? Any questions so far, guys? Are you clear? All right. So another idea that I want you guys to understand is the idea of asymmetry. Asymmetry. All right. So what is asymmetry? Asymmetry means that the two sides are choosing to fight different wars using different techniques because one is much stronger than the other, okay? America is a great empire. It has unlimited resources. It has the USD. It controls the world, right? Iran is a country that has been under economic sanctions for the past 45 years. It's poor. Its technology is very limited, okay? But as we learn in this class, actually, those nations that are poor actually have more energy. They're more open, and they're more cohesive. All right, so let me give you an example. This is what we call the Shahad drones. Shahad drones. Each of these drones costs $50,000 at most, okay? At most. It can go as cheap as $35,000 US. But one of them is $50,000. As you can see, you can fit a lot of these drones to a truck that can go anywhere in Iran, and they can hide anywhere. All right? So the thing to understand is, first of all, these drones are cheap. They're easy to make. They make about 500 a day. Okay? And estimates are about there's 80,000 right now that the Iranians have. So they can go on for a long, long time. Okay? And one of these drones, again, can knock out a desalination plant. It can knock out an oil field. It can knock out a hotel. It can do a lot of damage. Okay? And it's easily transportable. You can hide it anywhere. You can use it from anywhere, okay? And that's what the Iranians are using as an offensive weapon. And how do the Americans defend against this? They use something called a THAAD, right? Right, guys? This is what they use. THAAD. THAAD stands for Thermal High Altitude Air Defense. And they also have like Patriot systems. There's a lot, okay? The thing that you need to know about the system is it's really expensive. This missile, guys, costs $1 million. $1 million. So there's this $50,000 drone coming your way, and you throw a $1 million missile at it, okay? And often these missiles miss, so you have to throw 2 or 3 missiles at it, okay? So you're spending $2 to $3 million on each $50,000 that the Iranians spend. That's kind of silly. Second thing you'll notice is that this thing is really big and really slow. And therefore, you can't really move it around. Therefore, it's pretty easy for the Iranians to spot where this is and attack it. And then when these things blow up, that's a lot of money, guys. Okay? Then you're like, what? But this makes no sense. You know the Iranians have drones. They've had drones for like 10 years. You've also seen drones used in the Russia-Ukraine war to devastating effect. Why don't the Americans know this? Why did they prepare? Okay, and again, it has to do with military doctrine. Because military doctrine determines how you fight a war, it determines on your bureaucracy, and it determines how you spend your resources, okay? And unfortunately, the Americans are used to fighting something called the Cold War, right? And the Cold War, because you can actually fight the war, you can actually use, kill each other because then people use nuclear weapons. The Cold War was about flexing. Flexing, okay? You see how big and powerful I am? Me! Okay? That's all it was. These weapon systems are designed to scare the crap out of you. They are designed to impress you. And as a result, they cost a lot of money, and they really don't do anything, all right? So that's the entire American military. It costs a lot, and it doesn't really do anything. And it's not resilient. It's not innovative. It's not open. All right? Also, the other thing I have to say this, okay, is if you look at the American military, it's corrupt. So this is really about corruption. So the Americans don't really care about winning a war. What they care about is spending as much money as possible because then they get a cut. It doesn't make sense. All right? And that's why the Americans are in the situation as they are. All right, let's continue. All All right. So something that people don't really talk about, but you need to understand, it's the water issue in the GCC, in the Middle East, in Iran. All right. So this is a map of the world, and if you are light blue, Brazil, Canada, you have nothing to worry about because you have a lot of water, a lot of fresh water, very little population. All right. So 100% just means 100% water stress just means that you drink as much water as the environment produces. Okay? So you want to be below 100% to be sustainable. Ideally, you want to be at 10%. Okay? If it goes above 100%, it means that you are drinking more water, using more water than the environment actually produces. Okay? So you're putting stress on the environment. So 20% is really bad, right? Because you're using twice as much water as the environment produces. Guess what, guys? Look at the Middle East, okay? Egypt, 6,420%. Saudi Arabia, 883%. All right? Bahrain, almost 4,000%. Dubai, 17,000%. All right? So water is a huge issue. Again, it doesn't matter if Iran kills American soldiers, destroys American military. It doesn't have to do that. All it has to do is destroy the desalination plants, and then the GCC is destroyed, okay? But it's also true that Iran has water issues. 72% is pretty bad, okay? So even though the Iranians could destroy the GCC much faster than the Americans could destroy Iran, Iran is still in trouble, okay? So let me give you an example of this. This is like, so this is another map that shows you the issue of water scarcity, okay? And it's just basically the Middle East, okay? Their biggest issue in the future is water, okay? And that's where the geopolitical tensions will arise in the future over water. India is also affected as well, okay? All right. All right. So let's look at the map, guys. This is called Lake Urmia in northern Iran. It's the 6th largest saltwater lake in the world, or it used to be. Okay, this is what it was in 1984. This is the shallow, this is the deep, okay? You guys see that? It's really big, right? 20 years later, guys, this is what it looks like. There's no more water here. You can walk from here over to there, okay? There's some water over here, but it's shallow now. That's how serious the water issue is in Iran. And that's the weak point that the Americans and the Israelis will attack. All right? They want to make sure that Iran has no access to fresh water, which will cause devastation in their nation. Okay, that's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is this. This is a map of the different ethnic minorities in Iran. As you can see, it's a very diverse place. In the center are the Persians, but you also have 10 other groups as well. And in the borderlands, it's basically a different country, right? Like, these are basically different countries. And so these places have more common areas with their neighbors than they do with Iran. Okay, so the second weakness of Iran. The first is the water. The second is the ethnic makeup of the country. So the strategy of the Americans and the Israelis moving forward is to destroy Iran as a coherent nation state, divided into ethnic enclaves, and have them fight over water. That is the grand plan of the Israelis and the Americans, okay? All right, this is the vision where Persia is limited, and then all these other places are sponsored by the Americans and the Israelis. They're given money, they're given weapons, they're given political support, and then this war will wage over water forever, okay? And this is how you destroy Iran and make sure Iran is no longer a viable threat to you. That is the plan of the Americans. Okay? As you can see, it's a pretty evil plan. And that's why they have not announced it. Right? Because if you announce it, you're like, why are you doing this? What did the Persians, what did the Iranians ever do to you to warrant you coming and destroying their civilization? And the answer is nothing. Right? So the Americans, Israelis, will never admit they're doing this. But if you look at the map of water supply, of ethnic tensions, this is the optimal game theory strategy for them to use against Iran. Okay, does that make sense? This is a long-term plan that they have in place. And it's all moving towards this plan. But now the question then is, how can the Iranians respond to this? And the answer is this. This is a map of the Muslim world. Okay? So the light green are the Sunni people. Okay? That's 90% of the entire Muslim population, about 2 billion people. Okay? Then you have in dark green the Shia. So as you can see, the main place of the Shia is Iran. Okay? Iran is one of the few Shia nations in the world. But you can also see from this map that Shia are spread throughout the world. Okay? And so the first thing that the Iranians want to do is create a jihad to unite all the Shia against the American empire. All right? So what they want to do is create an uprising. And it's already happening, guys. The Shia in Pakistan stormed the American embassy in Pakistan, and the Americans killed a lot of people, okay? The Shia have attacked the American embassy in Iraq. The American embassy are being attacked in a lot of places, right? So the first strategy is to create an international global jihad of the Shia against the American empire. And it's already happening. It will continue for a long time because the Americans have killed the Khamenei. Okay? And that requires vengeance. The other thing, though, is that it can unify the Muslim world. Okay? If you look at this map, most of the Muslim world is actually run by dictatorships that are not popular at all, okay? And they're allowed to exist because of the American empire, right? You go to Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Algeria, these places, they're all run by clients of the American empire, right? So if you rally the people who hate their governments and you overthrow them, then that makes Iran the leader of the Islamic world. Not just the Shia world, but the Islamic world. And this creates something called Pax Islamica. That is the end goal, guys. Okay? If you do that, then you don't have to worry about the Americans and the Israelis anymore. Right? So the Israeli game plan, the American game plan, is to fracture Iran into ethnic enclaves, and they'll fight over water for the rest of their lives, and they'll all die. The Iranian game plan is to create a religious war, a crusade, that unifies the Shia people, that overthrows the American empire, and establishes something called the Pax Islamica. All right? All right. So, again, the key is the GCC. All right? So the game plan is this. You have to destroy the GCC. Why? Because the GCC is the linchpin of the American empire. So what the GCC does is this. It sells oil, and then for US dollars. Where does it put US dollars? It puts US dollars into the American stock market. All right, so this is investments of the UAE, okay, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait into the US financial markets. As you can see, from 2012 up to today, it's been exploding. All right? Because the US financial markets is one of the safest places where you can put your money. The intention is this. The intention is, hey, if I cut off oil and these countries no longer have access to US dollars, they're forced to spend whatever resources they have on protecting themselves, okay? And then guess what happens? The stock market collapses. The stock market collapses. The stock market is the real growth engine of the US economy. The entire US economy collapses with it. All right? There are about maybe 7 companies in America that accounts for about a quarter of stock market growth, okay? These 7 companies, of course, are AI companies. NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Apple, okay? These are the companies, and then these companies are heavily invested in by the GCC nations. So if these nations are no longer able to invest in the stock market, these companies will collapse in value. And with that, that would lead to economic depression in America. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so that is the situation for today. Today was just an overview, guys, okay? I know we covered a lot. I know there's a lot to take in, but over the next few weeks, we will explore each issue in depth and really understand what's really going on, okay? All right, so any questions, guys? Any questions about what we've just learned? Okay.
If other countries such as Italy, France, China, or Russia, they have also joined this war, like, what's the cause of they joined the war? Because of oil or those resources?
Okay. That's a good question, okay? So I don't want to spend too much time on this question because we will explore this question as we move along, okay? So the question is, what brings the world into this conflict? And the easy answer is just oil access, energy access, okay? They need to protect their energy supplies. Because remember, it's a very complicated situation because Europe is now fighting Russia. So Europe is not buying any oil resources, energy resources from Russia. Therefore, it depends a lot on the GCC. So the GCC is not providing them energy, then Europe will go bankrupt. Okay, so Europe needs to enter this war on behalf of the Americans. Okay, and then you have Russia, which cannot allow Iran to fall because if Iran falls, then they'll come after Russia next. All right, China is actually neutral. China's okay with either scenario. But that's just the way that the Chinese system is set up. Okay, so we're going to explore this question as we move along. But it's a very complicated issue. All right. Okay, and each nation will have its own different strategic interests to consider. All right, and what we need to know, what we need to figure out is that this war in the Middle East is actually connected to the Ukraine war. And then as we move along, I'll show you how these two things connect together. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Okay, great. So we'll continue this discussion on Thursday, okay?